All right, welcome folks. Great to see some people already joining us. We'll be starting in about 4 minutes time at 6 o'clock here Melbourne time. Welcome to everybody. Feel free to jump on the chat and say hello and where you're from, and warm up those keyboard skills as you contribute to our session today. So we'll be starting soon. Hi, Vicky, Michelle. Tell us where you're from as well. It'd be great to kind of know where in the world you are.
Hi, Vicky. Good to see you online. And Carmen from New Zealand. Welcome to the Ditch People.
See, Aaron's joining us. Hi, Aaron. From New Zealand.
Well,
Kia ora.
yeah. From Dubai too. Nice.
Far north of Echuria. Bridget.
Hi, Lois from Colorado. Welcome. I don't know what time it is there. Oh, my word.
Yeah, what time is it, Lois?
So nice to see so many names. Hi, it's been years. How are you? Luisa. Hey.
We'll be kicking off in a couple of minutes, folks.
Darren, great to see you.
Hi, Zaved from the Punjab in India. Great to have you with us.
Lois is saying that it's almost midnight in Colorado, so we appreciate you taking the time, Lois. You must be right into AI. Nice work.
Thanks, Lois.
Yeah, huge shout out to those who are doing either the bookend of the day or at the start of the day for many of these people.
Huge shout out to those driving their car at the moment too, by the way. I always love a good after school or preschool webinar car audio.
Who's on the drive time?
However, we do hope you've stopped before you've turned that on and set it all up and then driven off. Not a problem, Darren. It's all about sharing. If we don't share, we don't learn, especially in this context at the moment, right? Everything's so quick and fast, we've got to share. Hey, Carmen, is it snowing down your end of the woods today? Wow. Hello, Terry from Canberra. I think, have we got all of Australia covered yet? Have we got any Western Australians yet? Yes, we do.
I saw a Perth up there.
Yeah, we have. We've got a Queensland. We got a Northern Territory.
Yeah, Liz is from Perth.
Awesome. And who else have we got? We've got Victorian people in there, of course. And the New Zealanders. Hello, thank you to the New Zealanders. Where else are we covering? Tasmania. I think I saw a Tasmania. Yes, Kelly from Ulverstone in Tasmania. And what is that everywhere? Is that everywhere? South Australia.
Yeah, we've got someone from South Australia from the beautiful McLaren Vale region.
All right. And then we go out, and then the onion goes out. We've got New Zealand there. What other country? America. There's a Dubai.
All right. So, Pip, whilst you're doing the geography mapping, I'm also very excited too. We are going to get started though because it's 6 o'clock already, and our little warm up there is great. So, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to our session on AI tools in education. This is a free webinar, and I just want to begin by saying thank you to these amazing people that I'm with today for being up for joining us in a free session to talk about some of these, I was going to say emerging technologies. They're certainly emerging into the educational space. And I know that there's actually a bit of a longer story for a lot of these technologies for us to kind of understand and explore. Let's kick off with an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Bunurong people, who are the traditional custodians of the land I join you from today. I recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, culture, and learning. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and rising. I also want to acknowledge the lands that you're joining from us today. We just listened to all those amazing places that you're from. And it's great to see you talking about and acknowledging the lands that you're joining from in the chat. Keep that going. It's great to see you kind of welcoming and connecting with people, but also from further afield we've seen UAE and Colorado burning the midnight oil and crossing into the next day. I acknowledge the lands that you're joining from today. And I know that this work that we're engaging with, the learning that we're engaging with, is it's important to see it as a much bigger ecosystem and an effort for all of us to connect with. Can I also just take a minute just to recognize the devastating loss of life due to the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria? It's been very challenging to kind of see, and I know that on behalf of our team here, just our thoughts go out to everybody that's been impacted. So we have an opportunity today, and it's a privilege, isn't it, that we get the opportunity to do this, to connect in the way that we have, to click a few links and be connected in the way that I recognize that that's a real privilege. It's an opportunity for us today to connect with each other, to share some ideas, to develop some understanding, and to work creatively so we can rise to some new challenges together. I've got some housekeeping and a few protocols for everybody before we kick off. So if you've ever worked with me, you know that I like to talk about the way that we actually work before we jump into things. And so on the left-hand side here, you've got some simple protocols. I'll get to those in a second. Bit of housekeeping for you. So we're going to run from 6 till 7, so we're going to run an hour. Say hello as you have done in the chat if you're joining us. I can see Pamela from Singapore and Mario from Parramatta. Please keep sort of connecting with people and saying hi in the chat, and also use the chat please for asking any questions. And so we're all going to keep an eye out for anything that is relevant to that point in the session, or if we might store some up and answer a few questions at the end if we've got more time. There is a recording. Everybody asks, is there a recording? There is a recording. And so yes, and resources will be sent to everybody who's on the list. So if you're registered, we'll be sending out some resources afterwards and making sure you've got access to that link. And there's no need to worry about your microphone because this is obviously a live stream. And also there's no awkward breakout rooms for you to worry about at the end of the day, the beginning of the day, or the middle of the night, wherever you are. So there's a bit of housekeeping. Participation and feedback are the two sets of protocols I want you to engage with as you participate in your learning tonight, this evening, this morning. It's going to be weird, isn't it? We're crossing so many time zones, so can't make any time references. But let me just quickly talk about these protocols. So I'd like you to be hard on the content and soft on people. So this is also about how we might engage with some of these ideas around artificial intelligence in education and the tools that we're starting to see sort of spread across our social networks. Hard on the content, so ask those hard questions, and we want to also do the same today. Soft on the people, so soft on the people that are either sharing these things or innovating in your schools. Hard on the content, soft on people. Going to be kind, specific, and helpful in our feedback and critique. So if you're offering any ideas or you're offering comments into the chat, please use that as a set of protocols. Make sure you're kind, make sure you're helpful, but be specific as well. If you're really, want to be as precise as you can be in the way that you're framing your question or asking your, sharing your inquiry. Step up and step back. So if you do have questions, please share them, step up and contribute. I'm also saying this to the team here, make sure you step up and contribute your ideas. This is more of a dialogue session than it is just a straight traditional presentation. So we're all going to be chipping in and sharing our expertise as we kind of go through the different parts of the session. Each of us has a little theme or a bit of a section to talk through some ideas, but we'll all be contributing. And then last of all is the Chinese character Ting for listening. And it just reminds us to be as present as we can, to listen with undivided attention, with 10 eyes, to wrap your ear around the speaker, to treat them like royalty if you can. So we're asking all of you to treat us like royalty. And we welcome you, and we really want you to kind of take some time to pause and to kind of take stock of what's been going on. And maybe that's an interesting thing for us to think about, is the pace at which a lot of this work around artificial intelligence has happened. It seems to have happened very, very quickly, and a lot of us are kind of feel like we're playing catch up. I certainly feel like I'm playing catch up most of the time with all of this. So this is a good chance for us just to slow down a little bit, just to pause and just to reflect and just to explore a few topics tonight, during our session. So you are really, really welcome. One last thing before I introduce or ask the team to introduce themselves. Just remember, if we don't hit everything today, like a question that you have, and there was like lots and lots of different things that people are asking about, we'll leave some contact details at the end, and you can stay in touch with us individually. You can hit us up for some questions. And I'm hoping to run some more of these open sessions with panels and an opportunity to continue to learn in the future. All right, that's enough of me, enough of those things. Let me just bring us all into the space and say hi. So what I'd like to do is we'll just go around the team. Chantelle, maybe you can start for us and just do a quick introduction, where you are, where you're working. That'd be great.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to see so many familiar names in the chat. I am Aussie, but right now I live in the Kingdom of Cambodia, and I'm teaching here at the Australian International School of Phnom Penh. So a little bit of background. I've taught in the ACT, Sydney as well, and Adelaide. And so, and then my next stop is Ethiopia. So traveling around and spreading the love, literally, because that's my name. Brilliant.
Chantelle, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us. And Chantelle, you're going to share some stories from the classroom, the ways that you're implementing, aren't you, with the rest of us later?
Yeah, ways that we're playing. I'm going to say it's playing. Right
playing,
now.
Yes, that's certainly been a choice word that we've all been using, actually, is just making sure that we play with these technologies, is, make sure we kind of get our hands dirty and just have a play, have a tinker. I think that's been a really important part of the way that we've become a little bit more confident with some of this tech. Chantelle, thank you very much. Steve, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Certainly. Hello, everybody. My name's Steve Brophy, and I am coming to you from Wurundjeri country. So I'm the Director of Digital Transformation at Ivanhoe Grammar School. And I've been charting this particular space, AI, for quite some time. And so I'm really excited to be talking about ethics. It's really a pivotal element of AI in education, but also looking to demystify some of the language around what the tech is, just because there are so many buzzwords and so much overwhelm around it. And so hoping that today is a little bit of a grounding in something that you can take back into your classrooms, or even just have better conversations moving forward.
Great, Steve. Thank you. You're welcome, and welcome here. And your expertise will be. I'm particularly interested in hearing the way that you can frame some of this technology in the kind of longer timelines that maybe some of us aren't familiar with, and just that sort of sense that I mentioned earlier about this is not really emerging technology. It's emerging for some people in education, but it's how it's been developing for a long time. So it'd be great to kind of get your insight on some of those things. Great. So Pip, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Pip Cleaves. I'm a curious who has fallen down a deep, deep rabbit hole. And I'm kind of reminded of 2009, 2010, that Web 2 that smacked us all in the face, and we all tried to jump on as quickly as we could without thinking much about what we were gathering and what we were learning at that time. So I'm feeling a little bit of deja vu, but I'm also feeling like I'm not trying to gather everything. I'm trying to create the world in a way that makes sense in my educational context at the moment. So I am loving all this new learning that is around us at the moment, but it is there's some sort of deja vu feeling happening for sure.
Pip, it's great to have you with us. And you mentioned there about Web 2.0, and we'll come back to that in a second as we start to kind of think about how this, at the moment, this sort of emerging wave for us in education of this technology, how it sort of feels a little bit different. Just a few extra details about myself, just so you understand where I'm coming from. I used to be a primary school teacher in England for 10 years and worked as a technology coordinator for all of that time. I was literally doing it within my very first job at whole school level. And so always been interested in how technology has the ability to enhance learning and create new experiences that otherwise we wouldn't be able to, or our students wouldn't be able to have. And it's something that has been part of my DNA for as long as I've ever taught. And so I'm an optimist, but a pragmatist as well. And I come at this with real optimism to kind of see where we might go. But I know that we've also got to have more sessions like this to kind of figure stuff out together. I have a question that's going to kick us off, and then we'll jump into Steve's session. So first of all, this is a question that we're just going to dive in together. I'm also keen in the chat as well. If you're, just want to play along, feel free to share your thoughts about some of these things that we're talking about. So why does this technology shift feel different? We have all of us here in this session, and many of us online now in the live stream, we've been here, we've been around the block a bit when it comes to technology use. We've got the kind of wounds and the kind of battle scars from advocating for technology use in teaching and learning. And we've seen different waves, and we've seen different emerging technologies, mobile technology, even, maybe the emergence of more connected schools. Things like things like YouTube as a bit of a battleground for stuff that was going on in schools. And so we've seen some of these emerging disruptive technologies. And this is my question to you, team, as you think about this. Why does this technology, why does artificial intelligence tools or technologies that are associated with AI, why does that feel different?
I'll jump in. For me, I think, so when I think back to 2009, 2010, and I was literally a deer in the headlights gathering all the cool things, and I was just getting anything I could find and then retrofitting my classroom to that tool. But I think we've learned, and it's a bit different this time because we know to lead from pedagogy in technology, not just to grab the latest tool that happened to come across Twitter that day and use it tomorrow, but actually think about the pedagogy need and then go and find a tool to fit that need. I think also we have much more sophisticated learners, more sophisticated technology skills. So I think I work in the high school context. I think our high school students have a better skill set and better ability to use technology as a learning tool, not just so they engage with the learning better as a result of the technology than they would have done 10, 12 years ago.
Yes, that's a new insight for me. Pip is just framing it from, how much further in more comfortable, familiar our learners are. So thank you for centering it there. Steve and Chantelle, do you want to keep going?
Yeah, I'll jump in because Tom and I were talking as well about it feels a little bit like when Web 2.0 was a big thing. We were talking about that earlier as well. And I'm reading some of the comments And I think what's so interesting is the juxtaposition of human and scary, from what a lot of people are saying. And I, for me, it's the power balance is really changing. This time, there's far more power in the hands of the user, I think. And it forces us to be more human in the sense of, who am I in this space? Like, who am I now that this technology is available to me? So we're really forced to challenge our humanity and who we are as we partner with this kind of technology. That's
yes,
my
that question, Chantelle, that you said about who am I in this? You know, how does this change me or affect me? What's my place? I think is a really powerful kind of frame to kind of think about in terms of my role within it, the different responsibilities that you have, but also personally, those kind of those intimate personal feelings that we have about how this is affecting your own sense of creativity or the things that you value that you think is worthy to put out and express into the world. I think that's a really fascinating, simple, who am I within all of this frame. Steve, what do you think about what Chantelle was saying there?
The interesting thing for me is I keep coming back to how it was structured for release. So they made it free. They made the UI really simple. They made the architecture open source. And so what ended up happening is it escaped, and not just into the education sphere, but I was having conversations with nurses and doctors, and very, very human conversations around the weight and the impact of it. And I think many of us have seen enough AI is going to take all the jobs. And I think what happened is this was the first real, and I'll give you context. I ran a webinar in October. I had 2 people show up to that webinar on AI in education. And we had over 500 signups for this.
Yeah, we had 500.
Yeah. So I feel like the game of whack-a-mole can't be dealt with, and we're having to face real human conversations. And even today in the yard, I had an amazing conversation with an English teacher, and we were talking human to human about our own position and the challenges and the benefits. And so that's where I feel like it's just, you can't escape it. And then it comes back to discourse and dialogue and being able to work together with that.
Yes, interesting for us all to kind of grapple with somebody mentioned the zeitgeist, it's in the zeitgeist. Dr. Harvez has said there, and I think one of the things that we are all trying to deal with is to notice the things that are worth noticing, is to kind of pay attention to the right things at the moment. Like, we're literally living this challenging kind of space of, there is so much information and so much hype that we have to be able to kind of peer through that. And I think we have to kind of look beyond the things. This is one of the ways I think about this, is that you have to look beyond the things that are moving quickly to the stuff that is much more still, and there's always been there. It's just become a little bit harder to notice. So, we should seek to pay attention to the stuff that is still in our roles as educators in teaching and learning, the stuff that is still true, even though there's this great swirl and great hype around things, is to kind of peer through that veil, pierce that veil, to be able to see the stuff that is still true. And I think that that's one of the challenges of our time, is that you now have a much, much more mature news cycle where a lot of this stuff is just amplified. And I think we all are finding that as sort of a challenging thing of keeping up, as if we have to kind of keep up with something. So it's a challenging kind of space to be an educator, isn't it, at the moment? Any other additional comments, folks, before we move on? We're probably going to take some questions at the end as well, because I can see a bunch of really interesting ones. I think Linda mentioned something about, did people, when they experience Google for the first time, did they feel the same? That type of stuff. So we'll be picking out and paying attention to some of these questions, and we might come back to them at the end, actually. All right, team, we're gonna keep this moving. So thank you for just kicking us off with some of that. So Steve, I'm gonna come to you. We're gonna, you and I are just gonna have a quick chat about this sort of opening part, which is to do with, what is this all about? So maybe we can kind of begin by talking about what is the technology. Let's start with some basic building blocks, and the kind of simple terms to explain what the technology is, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about ethics.
Sure. So when I presented this to staff, I started from T backwards. One of the things with technology companies, they really develop naff names. Like ChatGPT is a goofy name, but what it does do is it gifts us a way to view it. And so I wanted to work backwards. And so transformer refers to the neural architecture of it. So it is a deep learning model, which means they're trying to replicate how humans think. So they're trying to replicate a neural network. So that's really to talk about the structure of it. And most of that comes from a 2017 paper. And most of the innovations that we see have come from that particular innovation. It uses a process called unsupervised learning. And the easiest way to explain that is when you get an unusual transaction on your credit card, it uses unsupervised learning to detect that. So it detects anomalies, it looks for patterns, it's trained on lots and lots of data. So we move so the transformer is really just, okay, that's what it does. Pre-trained means that it has been fed a whole range of information. So for many of us, it's called a large language model. It's been trained up to 2021. So hence why anything post 2021 is not really available. You can sort of trick it into doing so, but it's pre-trained on a really large model. So it's been fed all of Wikipedia, a huge range of social media. And what it's done using the transformer architecture is it's detected patterns, and it's started to understand using a process where it sort of weights words, and it does some pretty complex algorithms so that it can get to the generative part. And this is the part where that wows us. Is it is not like Google where you put in a search and it gives you a particular thing that somebody else has typed in. It has the ability to generate brand new text. And that's where the wow comes from it. So its architecture, the fact that it's been trained on a huge amount of data, allows it to seem really, really intelligent. But all it's doing is it's pattern detection. And the difference between ChatGPT and some of the other writing models is that ChatGPT has the ability to hold, and is designed to hold ideas in conversation. So that particular technology, that particular innovation allows you to really be in dialogue. And this is one of the things that I think is also quite confronting, because in essence, you're engaging with something that's providing really, really quickly brand new content that most of the times is pretty good. We know that it does generate some BS. So that understanding the architecture really starts to give you some limitations, and understand that the way that you work with it and the way that you work with your kids is to actually show them that sometimes, and I've got examples in the English classroom, it's actually incorrect. And here's an example of this. And so it shows that it's a step forward, but not a huge enough step to go, oh my God, this is Skynet and all of it's not artificial general intelligence. So the name tells you quite a bit. If you'd like to learn a little bit more, I've got plenty of resources.
So Steve, I just put this together. I was thinking, these are some of the things that we're dealing with in terms of the structure. On the left is that big bit of data. It's like they literally download everything off the internet up until 2021. So there's a whole lot of data. They then push this machine learning algorithm at that data with a lot of compute power. So these are all words that we're all learning like within the last 6 months anyway. But compute power is really important because it costs a lot of money to do this. And that's an interesting thing to think about, how Google is going to kind of transition into more of this. And what they spit out, as Steve was just explaining, are these models, these pre-trained models. ChatGPT has been specifically tuned to conversational, to be able to kind of hold that conversation. And that's what we're interacting with. So it's like the data has gone through that machine learning process, and we're working with these models, and they're different models for different things. And so when you make pictures, like you do some nolling, Pip, on your kind of Mid-Journey account, then you're using an image model. It has a slightly different kind of architecture and algorithm, but essentially the same thing. ChatGPT is a particular model. GPT-3 is something that you would have heard about as well. That's a different model. I know that there's also talk of it being integrated into search and those types of things with Bing. So that's probably GPT 3.5 or 4. So again, a different model. And so these are the things that we prompt. And so we'll talk a bit about this. You would have read a little bit about the idea of interacting or coding or asking this model to do something for me. And that's what we talk about when we prompt it, and it kind of creates something and completes it.
I think that just adding on to that, Tom, is
go for it.
the best way to amplify ChatGPT is to chat with it. So yeah, you can get it to do a one-off thing, but you can really harness the power when you interact and chat.
Yeah, great.
With that element.
That's a great tip. So, ask it to do what it's good at. Stay in the conversation for longer. Don't expect a kind of a one-off straight away get a response. Kind of get into that kind of back and forth and stay in the kind of chat for longer. You tend to kind of get better results. And so we'll talk a little bit more about prompting maybe a little bit later. Steve, one of the best ways that I kind of think about this is also what we know already in terms of technologies that are doing this. Like, I don't think of this great kind of shift is actually quite a gradual shift. For example, Grammarly has been doing a lot of this stuff for me, for a while. Autocorrect on your phone, that's a model that is basically the same. If you've seen any Smart Compose in Gmail or any of that, that's all using these same models. And another one I think about is forecasting the weather, which is the same. So there's a big data set of, what of weather records. They compute that with algorithms and they get kind of a prediction. And essentially that's the same kind of type of structure that allows them to predict the weather, in Melbourne. Maybe not easy in Melbourne. You get kind of lots of versions of it, but I'm not sure what the compute would be there. But Steve, should we move on and talk a little bit about any other aspects that you want to kind of just define before we move on?
Yeah, the only other thing is that they've open sourced the model. So you don't need to build it all from scratch. You can just leverage it. And that's why we're seeing what OpenAI has given the world. But in actual fact, we're soon going to see an application layer where people have bespoke things for education. And so that's really the exciting part, and also the most challenging component. Because, as I said, that whole whack-a-mole is challenging because the architecture can just be open source and people can build on top of it. So it's both exciting and scary in the same breath. And Tom, I wanted to share my screen because when I think of models and I think about how I can take this into the classroom, unsupervised learning and explaining that to my kids is quite challenging. And so supervised learning is a particular... So it's basically, this is a picture of a banana, show me a banana. And so I'm going to just share my screen here.
Yeah, go for it.
Something called Teachable Machine. And what Teachable Machine is really, really good at is it allows you to build your own model. So let me just see that right there, and I'll just play and talk over the top.
There we go.
So Teachable Machine with Google allows you to, here I am taking... I'm holding down record, I'm taking lots of pictures of my drink bottle, and this is a calculator. I'm holding down and taking lots and lots of pictures of it. So I've got two different things, two different inputs, and now I'm training my model. So you can do this really, really quickly with your students. This is
so an image data set, right?
Correct. And you can add more and more data sets. I did a fun game with my kids where it was dad, my daughter, my son, and we would pop up. And it's all local data, so it's not exporting it to anywhere. and then you can preview the model, and you'll see an example. I'm going to do a bit of a test here, but you'll notice that it's changing between inputs and outputs. So this is a really, really powerful way to demonstrate that what a model is by actually building it and using it with your kids. Now, that's a type of supervised model. So you are labeling the information. Unsupervised, just to sort of, is a huge amount of data that's not labeled at all. And the algorithm detects the patterns like the weather and your credit card anomalies.
That's great. So Steve, can you just take us quickly into, give us some of the key things regarding the ethical challenges and questions that we should be keeping front of mind. There was a reason we put this talk about ethics at the beginning of our session. So maybe you can just kind of give us a few key things to keep in mind. I'm just aware of our time and want to make sure that we get to Pip and Chantelle as well. So, but Steve, give us some of the key ideas regarding our kind of ethical challenge.
Can you go to the slides as well, Tom? And then that way
I've got it.
Something just
Here we go. Yeah.
So I've just used perplexity.ai. I've added it as an extension to my browser just to define ethics. And this is quite what I like about Perplexity is that you get the sources and everything, and it's really just a branch of philosophy that deals with morality. And for the past 2 years, we've engaged with in a PhD research project with Sophie Fenton, looking at human-centered learning in a hyper-digital world, and the key element was ethics. So if this is too complex for you for your primary classroom, Tom, if you could move to the next slide, then I put this into ChatGPT and just said, give it to me as a 6-year-old. So this is what the way I've been sort of using the tools is to actually sort of weave them into my own way, and a couple of things that have come up from ethics. So with technology, there have been many, many bad actors. And so, Tom, if you could jump to the next slide. And then AI does not have a moral compass. And so it inherits the moral compass of the developers. And this is why human conversations and conversations around developing moral compass and around, because the students that are having these conversations now are the future developers of this. And so if you can move to the next slide, Tom. A key component for us is to start the dialogue in the classroom. So the Institute for the Future is an organization who I deeply connect with, because as part of my job is really thinking not just about what now is, but dreaming into the future 10 years from now. What does the future look like? And they've developed this fantastic resource called the Ethical Operating System. And it's predominantly focused at those building the technology. And so this little QR code will get you access to it. But I wanted to just go to the next slide, Tom, and talk about the scenarios. So they have written these amazing scenarios that I have used in my Year 9 classroom to really talk about technology that's currently in existence, but also rapidly developing. And so once again, having discourse around such things and using scenarios, especially like this, and having kids justify their position or complete a research or using ChatGPT to post it in. And if you go to the next slide, Tom, you'll see that I've taken this particular scenario and asked, can you write it for an 8-year-old? And imagine a world where you can use your face to do cool things. There's a big computer that knows what your face looks like, and so on. And then I've asked it to give me an ethical question. The most exhilarating learning I've had in the past 2 years exploring this technology has been those conversations. And also the need to create a safe space when people get really tense about it. Because is it okay for people to use camera to see our faces all the time and keep it in a big computer? And so it's one of these really, really challenging things, is to not only have these conversations in the classroom, but is also to have these conversations within the parent community, within the teaching community. So another resource that I've used as well, if you go to the next slide, Tom, is moralmachine.net. And I find that MIT has some amazing resources. And so Moral Machine is an open source, large behavioral study that literally has you choose between one scenario and the other. And it reads it out. And sometimes it's quite confronting. It asks you to choose between animals and dogs, and choose between, if people are elderly or if they've jaywalked. And it starts to open up a conversation and allow people to really to explain how they think that way. The other great thing about Moral Machine is you also have the ability to create your own. And so the creation of those scenarios and presenting them also, once again, is that model building part. And so I've used both Moral Machine and the ethical operating system to have conversations in my classroom as well. And then the last, I guess, resource, because I really wanted to make this really pragmatic, because the dialogue comes from setting the space and being able to, like Tom did at the start, frame it beautifully. But this one is from MIT once again, and there's a lot of brilliant article activities that you can take and use straight away that talk about simple things, tightrope, between liberation and slavery, and what these do is you take it into the conversation, and then we take it to the next layer as those conversations get taken home, and then we as a community have more and more dialogue. And I always come back to something that you said, Tom, in the presentation. At the heart of every decision we make is a human being, and so these ethics conversations are, for me, the most important component of this whole process.
Fantastic, Steve. Thank you for sharing your insights there and some great resources. Just a reminder to everybody that we'll be sending out everybody on the email list who registered these slides, and so you'll be able to kind of get back to things. Thank you for popping those QR codes in there as well, Steve, so we can all kind of snag those resources. Interesting to think about the need for us to have slower conversations when the technology is moving really, really quick. There's also something about how these generative tools can create so much, and we have to also slow down enough to see where it's coming from. So that big data set that we showed you, there's bias and all sorts of things built into that, because it's obviously taking every written word from the internet. And so we have to be able to recognize that is where it's coming from. And so if there's bias in the results, even if the people that are making these technologies are attempting to address those limitations, that's where it's coming from. It's coming from the written word from humanity. And so we have to be able to be ready. We have to have these conversations. We know we need to kind of explore some of these things in the right way, in the most age-appropriate way with your students. Pip and Chantelle, any quick kind of comments or additional things to say before we move on?
I'll share a little bit more when I.
Yeah, you're going to talk about perplexity.
I'm good. I'll share when I get on later.
Okay, everybody's waiting their turn, which is fine. Steve, I'm grateful for you sharing some of that insight. I'm pleased that we've just sort of framed this, and there's like these other resources and things that we've got to access, these frameworks of thinking that will help us be better with the technology. I think that's useful to know that that's there. So Chantelle, let's move on to your work. You're going to tell us a little bit about Perplexity AI, and you've been using it in the classroom, right? Haven't you? So
so I'm going to dial it back to tag into what Steve was sharing, because quite a few months ago, actually, we played with the Moral Machine, and we used it to compare and contrast different ethical views from different cultures. So that really helped us discuss and wrestle with the potential biases that can come up in terms of AI and how machines are learning. And so I'm so pleased that it just is happenstance that we have already kind of played with that before we kind of took the step to jump a little bit into AI. And would you mind sharing the screen, please, Tom, the prompt engineering slide? Yeah, so this was really our start point. Most of our students have English as their second language. And so prompt engineering is a really cool way for them to get immediate feedback about the language that they're using. Is the machine showing them the kind of information that they're trying to get to show? And so certainly for myself, when I started playing with Midjourney and a lot of the other image generating AI tools, one of the great ways to just learn it was to just input some prompts and see what image came out, and then adjust it a bit and see what other people are doing and make adjustments with some of their prompts, much like a conversation and a discussion just online. And so really the first thing we did was introduce our students to prompt engineering and how you do that. And the way we did it is actually they sent them to me, and I put it through Midjourney, because a lot of these things we don't actually have free access to in Cambodia. So they sent them to me, I sent them back the images that were generated, and then they use that visual feedback to adjust their prompts, which is super cool. And then if you go to the next slide, Tom, we were then able to take this a step further and use Perplexity. And I think one of the real challenges about inquiry learning is always when students generate a complex, maybe ungoogleable question, which we want them to generate, the step from that to actually getting information from the internet that answers their question is so large that they tend to just fall back on, just Google Arnold Schwarzenegger or whatever it is. So one of the things I really love about Perplexity is that it enables us to ask far more complex, deep questions and get a complex, deep response. So you can see the way we did this was we just, old school, non-tech, had posters around the room with the PYP concepts on them, and we just had students add a range of different questions. But what they had to do, which is maybe a little bit more complex than usual, is add context to their questions, which you can kind of see from the examples in the slides. And what was cool is when I modeled that, we worked out kind of an interesting element of Perplexity is that it makes assumptions. So one of the things it did is when we were asking a question about one particular person, Perplexity linked that person to another person, and then it just assumed that because person A had done something, person B had also done something. So we were able to really look at the limitations of Perplexity, and as Steve was talking about, find the sources and actually read a little bit deeper into that.
So how did your students respond to some of this work? What were they, take us back into your classroom. What was the kind of vibe and the energy like?
Yeah, I mean, I think things like the moral machine, if we go right back, I think they were quite shocked actually that we have to make those decisions when we're programming tech, when we're doing machine learning. We have to decide, what does the machine do? So they were kind of quite shocked at those moral decisions, I think. They really, really enjoyed the prompt engineerings, particularly the boys, as you could tell by maybe some of the images. They were really excited. There were a lot of emails back and forth of the adjustments that they wanted to make. And also through that, we were able to look at the limitations and the way those image generating AI apps work. It's not about adding on and adding on and adding on. The complexity is in the way the image comes out, not in the different aspects you're adding onto the image. So that was kind of cool to explore it like that. But I mean, I think what was most exciting about Perplexity is that at the end of the day, what students did is they did a little mini expo about their person's life. And I found compared to other times I'd done something similar, students were far more confident in knowing their person. They really knew their person. And I feel like, you know, we could have had an interview with the students, with them acting as their person, and they would have been quite confident to do that because they were able to get responses to very deep questions.
It's brilliant. Chantelle, thank you for sharing that story. I know this is all emerging work and you're jumping in and having a go. And I hope that we can find and see, and I encourage everybody on the live stream now, if you're an educator and you're trying these things, find a way to kind of share your stories like Chantelle has done. Chantelle, you've got a Medium post, haven't you, that you've written up? So we'll have to link that somewhere as well. Just a quick comment before Pip, we come to you to talk about some more tools, but just a quick comment about prompt engineering and some of this sort of interesting language. One of the interesting things for me about this is that some software developers working in AI think that prompt engineering is actually a design problem, in that if for us to have to kind of work on something with an AI, to us to work it to get the right outcome means that something isn't right from the beginning. And so there is something interesting about how these interfaces will change as the models improve. So we have to give it less for it to get the right outcome that's aligned with our intention. I think that I have found, and I know that Pip, you mentioned this to me before, but when you work with image generating tools and artwork like Midjourney and DALL-E and those types of things, you're prompting in a slightly different way than if you're working with ChatGPT, but both of those are really useful to kind of experiences to have, and they make you better at prompting. And just one last thing. I mean, I've got a bunch that I could talk to you about with prompting, but I want to get to Pip's kind of great kind of session and part of our session. So I'll see if I could got some time at the end to talk a bit more about prompting. But one last thing is just to say that creating and adding our own first go into these technologies, so even drawing and sketching and then taking a photo and uploading that to Midjourney is absolutely should be part of this process. You know, writing out your first sentence and having a go at it, having a go at writing these things offline and going online. I think we've got to keep all of this open. It should never be that this is completely replacing and it's just going to do it all for us. We're still going to be able to kind of do that, have that first go. And with our students, we should be encouraging that balanced approach. You know, when you're ready to go to ChatGPT with like your first, second, and third draft even, and say, okay, let's see what new perspective you can bring. So let's just keep kind of that opportunity on the table. It should never be replacing that, at least that first go. Although sometimes it's good for just kind of starting us off, but you know, we've got to be able to work across it in different ways. So Chantelle, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know the detail and the kind of Perplexity AI as a tool, it's a great additional part of our toolkit, and we'll link to the Medium post where you've written it all up and everybody can explore what you've done in a bit more detail.
Yeah, I just popped that in the chat.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
So look out for that link coming in the chat. Pip, I'm going to come to you and we're going to talk a little bit more about tools and building the tool set, because this is much more than just ChatGPT, isn't it?
Absolutely is, yes.
So your screen is sharing now, Pip. So.
And I am okay. Good to go then, everybody. Is that right? Can you just give me a verbal all is good to go?
We are good.
Great. What I want to take you through is I'm going back to my days in the early Web 2 world where I used to gather. I called myself a gatherer back then. I would find anything. And I felt from about December to early January that I was gathering again. I knew all the tools that were coming up, and all of a sudden I realized that I had to turn into a curator, that I needed to start being careful about what tools and what we're going to use our tools as. So I just want to quickly fly through some of the tools that I feel are going to be the most useful to you. but I want you to remember that it's always pedagogy before technology. And I also love this little quote that is from 2020 that says, AI is not going to replace managers, teachers, doctors, dentists, anything, but the that use the AI will replace those who don't. So we're actually doing our students a moral disservice if we're not introducing them to the world of AI. And we can do that through a variety of ways. And that's what I want to show with you today. All the images that you're seeing here are done through a very basic mid-journey and what we call knowledge. I discovered that knolling is when you pull a tool apart or you pull a machine apart and you line up all the little bits of machines around. That is called knolling. So that's what these photos are. So the first tool I want to show you very, very quickly is probably one of my favorite ones, and it's called TLDR this. It's a really cute, it's a summary tool. So a really quick tool to summarize. So I've just popped in here before a little link. It's Valentine's Day in Japan tomorrow. Anyone who knows Japan knows this is one of their particularly crazy days. And I probably didn't do that well enough. So let's just grab another link and pop it in here. Let's grab this link and pop back into TLDR. Press the enter. Let's go short, concise, and press summarize. And it's going to pull out for me. If we go down, here we go. Here's the article. And Understanding Valentine's Day in Japan. It's taken a longer article and summarized it into some short, accessible text for students to understand. You don't need to pay. You don't need to sign up. It is just a short little tool to use. There's also a paraphrasing tool that can be used as well. So that would be my first tool that I would recommend. Another little tool that I like using is called Penelope. And Penelope looks like, is it this one? No, I'm going to go directly to here. Click into Penelope. This will be available to you to use. You can add into your Penelope. If I start writing, I can write, I can summarize, I've signed in there. There it is. Yay. So in preparation, what I did was I dumped some text on the right-hand side here. Let's do paraphrase something new here. If I press paraphrase, so I copied in some text, all this text on the right-hand side. It then paraphrases text for me, and then I can do something with that text. So in my world, the AI gives me a start. It inspires my students to move forward. We could also summarize. So we can paraphrase or summarize. And there in itself is a great discussion to be having with students. Summarize over on the right, left-hand side, but we can actually write text. So I've copied across the paraphrase and the summarize, but I can also add extra text in here. So it's kind of, I think, a really cool way to get students started with a flow of finding information, summarizing, paraphrasing information, and then putting some of their own thoughts in it. If you have some scaffolds you use in your classroom, you might like to move into that space. Chat Sonic. Another, it's I don't know, it's sometimes when GPT is not working for me, I'll come into here, and for this one I got it to write Valentine's poem as a 15-year-old, and I would ask my students to take that and to change that to fit their context, or if it was in Japan, to create it with a Japanese context to it. We also have some other options within the Chat Sonic. The ones I'm showing you at the moment are free. Or you can do quite a lot for the free version. We can also, let's go into a relationship coach to write a Valentine's Day poem. And excuse my caps lock on. Let's see what it does. Let's see how we go. Oh, okay. So this a relationship coach would tell you to do if you're writing. Now, if you have a job in the school of writing newsletters, or your students write newsletters, this can be the beginning of a writing piece for them as well. Another tool, if we head into it, is called Rewordify. So we're moving into some writing tools here. So with Rewordify, I'm just going to go and grab some text from a page here. Let's grab this big chunk of text. Let's just go that first chunk. I'm going to go back to Rewordify. I paste it in. I'm going to ask it to Rewordify, and it will give that text to me. I can then start playing around. If I hover over words, I can ask it to explain different. If you hover, it will give you what they mean to you. So, of course, Japanese words aren't going to have in English, but for our EALD students or our students who have a variety of literacy needs, it can be helpful. It can also be great in a differentiation sense as well. So you'll find this here. You can also ask it up the top. This is really groovy. I want to learn some new words. So what it will do, it will go through the words in my, you can get it to go through the words that you've just pasted in and give you 6 new words out of that text or whatever you like. Quillbot, not sure if any of you have heard of this. This is another multifunctional literacy tool, and you have everything from paraphrasing, grammar checkers, plagiarism checkers, so the free account will give you some basic stuff, but then you might have to pay to get to access some more. I like the free account for this one because you can't do whole huge big chunks of text. You can only do like 250 words, and I think for students that can be a really good thing. So this was the original text that I put in, and over on the right hand side it's giving me the ability to click on a phrase and rephrase that. So I can change the language to make it suit my needs. And I think that's important for students in this day and age to get to think about the audience that they're talking to and their language to suit that audience. Again, there's a huge amount of things you can do in this tool, and I would recommend it. Even the citation generation. So if I pop and just grab this URL of Hattie's latest piece and paste the URL in here, press cite, it's going to give me that how to cite it correctly. So here the AI becomes a helper in an area that we often say that it's kind of working around, if that makes sense. So that's Quillbot. Again, the links are all in the area. You all know and love Canva, but at this point, so Canva now has a magic write component in it, where most of you should have the full education free account. So if you've got that, this will work for that. And you can actually start using some AI in your writing inside Canva. So that's kind of cool that they're starting to come on board with us there. This is a very cute one. It is blocked for, I have to say that I don't know if these tools are going to be blocked in your context. This tool is blocked in New South Wales Education for Students, but open for teachers. But it writes a storybook for you and puts an image out of Mid-Journey to suit that. So the ukulele. So I wanted a nighttime story about playing the ukulele, and it wrote that for me and popped a little image on it for me within seconds. So you could use it as a stimulus for your students to then write their own, or even just for you to have in your class. Into some imagery work now. I love Sunday nights on my sofa playing with Mid-Journey, but I appreciate that sometimes we don't know how we sing all these images and we don't know where to start. This night cafe, when you here and choose create, it will give you a few different image generation platforms. So just like we've got Google and Microsoft, we've got different image generation platforms, and they all have a different look and feel. So you can come onto this site and it'll give you a variety. Or my current favorite is Mid-Journey, and I have this plugged into my Discord server. It sounds really geeky, but I'm not a geek, okay? So this just gives me a little bit of options, and you can see this is a human dressed as a greyhound. This is a greyhound human dressed in a Vivienne Westwood outfit. I quite like that one. But anyway, you can do all sorts of fun stuff. Heading right along, if you want to start, you've all heard of Teaching Copilot. This Teacher Toolkit AI is a website that will help you learn a whole learning lessons, and it's downloadable as a Word, and it's created by an Australian ex-teacher. So it's my favorite of all the teacher helping us to AI to plan our teaching and learning. I know time is coming up, so I'm going to leave the rest for you to explore. This one is my last one though, Tutor AI. You can type anything in here, like making Valentine's Day chocolate, and it will create a learning module for you to work through. So for any sort of differentiation, if you want to send students off on a self-learning journey, it will set that up for you within seconds, and even have a little quiz at the end for students to show their learning. So I should probably stop sharing, I think.
Amazing.
Is that right? Yep.
I'm sure we have all been, we're all grateful though, Pip, for some amazing tools. And I saw lots of comments about practical tools, fabulous to see these things, lots of things to play with. So Pip, thank you for gathering, curating your some of these ideas, but also sort of jumping in and having a play. One thing I would say there that's interesting is that ChatGPT is a bit unstructured in the sense that sometimes it's hard to know where to start. A lot of the things that you were showing there, you could do in ChatGPT or with these generative models, but you would have to kind of figure out how best to prompt it. Some of these more structured tools that you were showing, they're already set up to do that kind of structured prompting and that structured path and give you a really narrower, if you like, result. And I think that that's useful to know that these tools are out there. Isn't that right, Pip?
That's exactly my intent. I think just maybe a little bit open ChatGPT and go, yeah, but what do I do? Like, it's just a big box. I don't know what to do. Whereas if we guided them through a specific, let's use it for summarizing, let's use a tool for creativity, let's use it for communicating, then that is a language that the teachers know and can help us to make those first steps of the journey.
Brilliant.
I'm just going to share a link of all my links into the chat. Yes,
fantastic. And so, Pip, thank you again for sharing some of those ideas. I think we're all, we're going to be awash with tools. And so one of the things I often think about is when we're approaching this, how are we thinking about the tool set that we're building, the skills that we're developing, the knowledge set. So think about the stuff that Steve and I were talking about, like what is this stuff and how does it actually work? What's the architecture here? How does that help me engage in it in a different way? But also one thing I want all of you, maybe this is a bit of a call to action for all of you, is to play with the tools, start building the skills, because we've all started somewhere and the best thing to do is just to jump in. So start building your skills and start, reading stories of teachers using this, start kind of going down some rabbit holes to build your knowledge set. But importantly, keep in mind the mindset shifts that we all need to engage with as we start to kind of use some of this technology in the classrooms and to improve our own productivity and our own work. So tool set, skill set, knowledge set. But mindset, I think, is something that we've really got to continue to grapple with. We've got to keep having dialogue sessions like this to kind of keep thinking through, what does this mean for me? Who am I with all of this? What does it mean in terms of the ethical challenges of this, as Steve kind of brought in, and using some of those frameworks. So I realize our time, we're over time now, and so maybe I can just open the floor to the rest of you just to say a final word, just to say farewells, or anything you'd like to add on just as we finish up.
I'd love to frame by saying that we're not experts. We're just a few steps down the path, and just to encourage educators to share and to build in public and share, because what you do inspires what I might do in my class tomorrow, and very much just reach out and share. And I feel like that collective pooling of resources, and hey, we wrote this policy, do you have something that we could start with? I feel like that collegiality is now needed more than ever. So just encourage everybody to do so. And say thank you. I've got to head off. Physio awaits. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. We've got our details up on here if you do want them. Pip, so Chantelle, any kind of final words?
Really, I just want to echo what Steve was saying. I remember back to the day of when Twitter was new and everyone was just sharing the fantastic things they were doing with, Web 2.0. I hope that's what we get back, that people are just sharing the really cool things they're trying and they're doing with all of these AI tools. So yes, share, please.
Fantastic, thank you. Pip, any last words before I wrap up?
You can't break it. You can only make it better, and you can only
Yeah.
help your students prepare themselves for their future.
Yes, well said. It reminds me of that. The technology that our students are using is the worst technology they're ever going to experience. You know, so this version of it is the worst AI tools that they'll ever experience. It will only continue to get better. Thank you. So Steve has left us, but you know, I also just want to say thank you to Steve, Chantelle, and Pip for making some time to prepare for tonight, to gather your thinking. I'm really, really, really grateful. I know that there's many people signed up to our session and a lot of people kind of finding their feet. The question was, you know, what would you like to learn? And a lot of people just put, I like everything, like all of it, all the things. And so I know that we've all benefited from your expertise. So Chantelle and Pip and Steve, thank you so much for being up for sharing your ideas. And so everybody, these are our contact details. You know, if there was a question that we didn't get to because we were a bit too chatty, please make sure that you stay in touch. I'm really interested in running some more of these open free sessions where we just bring a few educators together and have some more kind of chat and dialogue. I'm hoping to kind of plan another one in a couple of weeks' time, and it seems to have been something that was being really, really helpful. So, but yeah, just as we finish up, just to say a big thank you to all of you online for joining us. It's been great to jump on and to share some of the things that we're learning, and we hope to kind of stay in touch and to connect with you again soon. Okay, thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.